bring the meeting to order whenever you have your quorum.
Okay.
Now it keeps asking for a screen name. I don't even know what that is.
Commissioner Coates made it, make it yet?
He's here.
It is good.
Okay, it started on YouTube.
Commissioner Black or Commissioner Holtzman in yet?
I don't see them.
We'll give them a minute or two to get dialed in. They can't make it online.
Good. Ed's trying the link again. It didn't work for him the first time. Aaron, you want to put only the commissioners and the staff on screen, please?
Mhm. Bye, Adam.
Pardon?
One of them was one of our consultants. So I was saying bye to him.
Oh.
I think everybody else is.
Oh, we can bring him back in if his item is on the agenda. Ed, are you trying again?
I think Carolyn's on now.
Good.
Yeah, she is.
Commissioner Holtzman.
Hey,
All right.
hey, guess what?
Yep.
What?
I got a whole litter of kittens in my backyard.
Here.
Hey, yeah.
Well,
What causes that?
I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order in hopes that Commissioner Black will be joining us shortly.
Hey, Linda.
If
It's
anybody
Rick.
hears anything from him,
Hi. I can't. They took me off the video. I have no video, and
who was that?
That was a member of the public.
Understood. Okay. Hopefully that gentleman can still hear us.
I think so.
Okay. Welcome everybody to this Lower Board of Commissioners regular meeting of April 27th, 2020. We usually begin our meetings with a prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. I am going to read a statement since we've been doing our meetings online. Just kind of some simple rules of our meeting this evening. And also there's proof of publication of this meeting available. You would just request it if you needed to see that. We will certainly get that to you. So the rules of our meeting tonight, obviously, the COVID crisis has made things a little difficult. So I'm just going to read a statement here about how we're going to conduct our meeting tonight. Welcome you to Lower Island Township. While this isn't our first virtual meeting, we're still getting used to it. The COVID emergency has obviously forced many of us in many segments of our society to operate in new and different ways, including the business of Lower Island Township. We're glad that you, the public, has been able to attend this meeting tonight with us. And Some simple rules of conduct for this meeting we believe are reasonable, but all participants, when you come in, you will be muted upon entry and your video will be disabled. If you'd like to comment on any agenda item or on any issue pertinent to the township, or just ask a question, please notify the meeting host by sending a chat message or by clicking on the raise your hand button on your computer. Please note that the meeting host may remove any participant at any time for inappropriate comments. Also, this meeting's being recorded and is also available for viewing on the township's YouTube channel. For those sake that would like to know, our meeting host this evening is our assistant manager, Aaron Trone. So if you're going to communicate, you'll be communicating with Aaron, and then at some point in the agenda, if you're going to make comment or participate in the meeting and you've communicated that to her, she'll make sure that that word or your video or audio or a combination of all of it will be heard by us, or at least make her best attempt for that to happen. I'd also like to just point out really quickly, we have our solicitor here tonight, Stephen Minor. We have Commissioner Holtzman, Commissioner Kutz, Commissioner Shin, and I'm not positive if Commissioner Black is on with us yet in any capacity, but I imagine at some point he will be joining us. We have our Director of Finance on the screen, Richard Grove. We have our Township Engineer, Dan Flint, and our Township Manager, Tom Verneau, and our Codes Enforcement Officer, John Evie, is with us this evening as well.
Mr. President, Commissioner Black is on the meeting.
Yeah.
His video is not on yet.
Okay. Well, welcome, Commissioner Black. So we'll start the meeting with a small prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'll bow your heads with me, we pray this day to give thanks for all the many blessings bestowed upon our township. Watch over us who are entrusted with the administration of this township. Create in us the earnest desire to serve faithfully and permit us to experience the joys of noble service completed for our residents. Help us to use every willing service and every effort put forth for good government. Heavenly Father, we ask your guidance to help us as commissioners to make the right decisions. We ask that you aid our staff as they perform the daily tasks of running our township, and we request that you be by our first responders as they protect our residents and see that they return home safe at the end of each day. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
For those that are able to stand with us, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
And to the republic for which it
one
stands,
nation,
one
under
nation,
God,
God,
visible,
indivisible,
liberty, and justice.
liberty and justice for all.
There he is.
All right, welcome, Commissioner Black.
Thank you.
Commissioners, we'll start the meeting tonight with taking a look at our meeting minutes from April 13th, 2020. Those meeting minutes were supplied to us in our packets this week, and we've had, all of us should have a chance to go through them. If we have any questions or comments on them at this point or changes that we would like to make, we can discuss that. If not, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the minutes from April 13th, 2020.
Move we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any comments or questions? I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. At this point in the agenda, or on our agenda, we would welcome audience participation on any item on our agenda this evening. Now, to be clear, at this point, you would be letting us know through the meeting host, our assistant manager, Aaron Trone, if there's any item that's actually on our agenda that you would like to participate in, make comment about. There will be a time later on in the agenda where you can make comment on any information that you have or would like to comment pertinent to the township. So at this time, is there anybody who would like to speak regarding any item on our agenda? Please say so now. Okay, I haven't heard any. Aaron, do you have anybody that's notified you?
Don't have anyone that's raised their hand or anyone has notified me through the chat feature at
Okay,
this time.
okay. I had to fix something on my computer. At this point, hearing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda, which is number 5 if you're following our agenda. And at this point, is there any commissioner, staff member, or anyone in attendance who would like to have an item on the consent agenda removed for further discussion? If so, you can request it now. Is there a request to remove any item on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would be looking to entertain a motion to approve the items on our consent agenda this evening, which are listed as follows. We have our department reports from the month of November, December, and January facilities, our February engineer, community and economic development, public works, facilities, and fleet report, and our March fleet maintenance, township engineer, community and economic development, and public safety. I'd be looking for a motion on that, as well as for the consent agenda also has the tax collector's March 2020 report.
Mr. President, I move we accept the items on the consent agenda, which are listed on our agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Shin and a second by Commissioner Kutz. All those in favor of approving the items on the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on, under your president, all I have this evening is to approve the check register of April 24th, 2020 in the amount of $650,000, $650,223.07.
Move we
Motion to approve.
second.
Okay, I have a motion, I believe, from Commissioner Black
Yes.
and a second from Commissioner Shin. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. President, did we miss the tax collector's report?
I included that in the consent agenda.
I'm sorry, you are correct. Thank you.
At this point, on our agenda for this evening, is there any business that's pertinent to the township? Discussions will be limited to 15 minutes per person. And for those who are joining us tonight, that's from the public or anyone else, at this point, you can discuss or make comment on anything pertinent to the township. We do try to limit those discussions to around 15 minutes. And when you, before you comment, you'll just simply give your name and your address.
Now, do you see each other? I see you.
So Ms. Trone, is there anybody looking to comment on
No trick.
It doesn't look that way.
Okay. Am I the only one that was hearing those noises?
You are not the only one.
No.
I said it sounded a little like Star Trek.
All right. So hearing none, we're going to move on, but if we'll allow the public to chime in later if they didn't get a chance to now. I'll make a point later in the agenda to do so. Moving on to number 8, to our township engineer. Mr. Flint will have you walk us through these items.
Okay, good evening, Commissioners. First item on the agenda is the minor subdivision plan for Richard and Linda Hammond, 1229 Ross Moyne Road, SLD docket 2020-02. And just to give you a bit of an overview, this is Ross Moyne Road running diagonally across the screen. The Pennsylvania Turnpike, Ross Moyne Elementary School, and this is the parcel in question right here. It's about a 10-acre parcel currently. You can see the shape of it. It does have frontage in 2 small locations along Ross Moyne Road. The driveway is in this narrow part of the lot, adjacent to the school property. And the existing house is towards the back of the property, towards Manor Drive. Trying to pull up the plans here. So this is the plan of. Here's the existing conditions. Again, here's Ross Moyne Road at the bottom of the screen here, Turnpike on the right side, and the existing home back here. What you do see here is a small parcel that was previously subdivided to serve as a future roadway to Manor Drive in the event that there was some future subdivision of the property here. So it is in effect 2 lots at this point, and the plan before you tonight would create a 3rd lot. And this is the plan that is proposed. You can see there's another house to be constructed in this location with a lot created around it. It would utilize the same driveway access off Ross Moyne Road, and there would be an easement agreement, joint driveway use agreement between the 2 properties that could be used to access the existing home in the rear and the new home to be constructed here on the new parcel. There's stormwater management proposed around this house because of the additional impervious coverage. You can see connections going through here for public water and public sewer for the new home to be connected to that. The existing home is on private water and sewer. There is a provision by note on the subdivision plan that if it is necessary at some point in the future, if the all-not system fails for the existing house, then it would be connected to the public sewer, which is here in Manor Drive. So it is creating a new building lot and 1 new home out of the 10-acre lot.
Dan, are you making notes on, all I have is the plot showing Ross Moyne Road and I don't see, do you have a cursor or something that you're pointing to things? Because if so, I'm missing it.
I'll have to rely on, I know it's on my screen. Aaron, what's on your screen?
I'm seeing property mapper, so I'm seeing the property.
Just the property.
You're not seeing the plan.
No.
That's what's on my screen.
No, all we have up is the property.
Yeah, it's existing conditions, Dan. None of us are seeing the plan.
One thing
Condition plan?
changed.
We're seeing the tax map.
All right, let me get rid of that.
Take your time.
That help? Or not? Still the tax mapper?
Still tax mapper.
Dan, if you hit stop sharing and then share again, it should give you the option of what to share.
I'll try that.
Well, fellow commissioners and Madam Secretary, while we're on this point, this is Commissioner Black. I'm going to be abstaining from all vote on this plan because my firm designed this plan. The plan is represented by Mr. Richard Bittner, who is on this wavelength tonight.
Ah, a plan.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Just to summarize what I already summarized, here's the existing driveway off Ross Moyne Road back to the existing house. The same driveway would be used for the new house to be constructed here. There's the new property line there to create the lot. Utility connections back through here, stormwater management around the proposed house.
Mhm.
Dan, was this,
As I had stated, the engineer for the plan, Rick Bittner, he's also on the call here. If there's any questions for him or for me.
this plan, just to confirm, was this plan recently run through the planning commission?
Yes, and they did recommend approval subject to addressing a few of the minor comments that were related. They also did recommend approval of the requested waiver.
Dan, I have a question. What is a flag lot?
There is an actual definition in the ordinance relating to the ratio of length to width of the lot. If you look at the whole lot, this would be the flag pole here.
Oh,
Would be the flag coming out. So this lot itself is a little bit oddly shaped, but it's generally a lot that has a long, narrow access to a wider portion of the lot.
okay. Thank you. These are pretty standard waivers for a development for a plan such as this. So I have no problem with the waivers.
Commissioner Kutz, you were at the planning commission meeting, I assume, where this was taken up. Do you have any comments on this at all?
Yes, Mr. President, I was present at the meeting. The commission seemed to, the planning commission seemed to not have too many concerns about this, just the comments that the engineer had mentioned, and I would be comfortable moving forward with approval as well.
So just a reminder, we just heard from Commissioner Black, who has he's claimed to have a tie to this plan, and he's going to be abstaining from discussion and I'm assuming the approval tonight. So if there's no other questions or comments, I would be looking at this point to take action to approve the minor subdivision plan, as well as approving the waivers that have been brought to us, through the process.
I'm ready.
Planning Commission.
I'll make a motion that we approve a waiver of the requirement in sections 192-59 point G, paren 3, paren A, and paren B, paren I, that flag lots are only permitted in a conservation subdivision.
Okay. Hold that thought for a second, Commissioner Shannon. I just wonder if we should address A first, and perhaps I'm misreading it. Should we approve the
Mr.
document
Shinny,
itself?
I missed that. I will withdraw my motion.
So I would, at this point, I would be looking for a motion to go back to 8A on the first page of our agenda and address this from the top down.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mr. President, if I could just add to it, actually the A is the description of the project, and then 1 through 6 are the action items.
Well, that's what I thought, Dan.
Okay, so Commissioner Shin was correct.
yes, he was.
I'd like my motion to stand.
Mr. President, do you need 6 separate motions here?
We have done it in the past that way.
We have traditionally done that.
Okay.
But I would entertain the solicitor's input on that question.
And generally we do that, Mr. President, because you may not want to approve every waiver. So I would prefer that you do it 1 through 5 as we have traditionally.
Okay.
I've said it twice. I'm not saying it again.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the first waiver. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion will carry 4-0 with President Black abstaining.
Well, I would be glad to move that we approve the waiver of the requirement in section 192-59.g, paren 3, paren h, that no more than 10% of lots within a subdivision be flag lots.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the question. As any comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with President Black abstaining.
Mr. President, I would move to approve a waiver of the requirement contained in section 192-57C9 to provide sidewalks along all street frontage until such time as the installation of same has been deemed necessary by the township for the health, safety, or welfare of the general public. These improvements shall be made at the owner's expense. This is a covenant running with the land, which shall bind the owners, their successors, heirs, and assigns.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the question. Is there any further comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0 with President Black abstaining.
Mr. President, I would move to approve a waiver of the requirement contained in sections 192-57B2H2 and 192-57C8 to provide curbs along all street frontage until such time as the installation of same has been deemed necessary by the township for the health, safety, or welfare of the general public. These improvements shall be made at the owner's expense. This is a covenant running with the land which shall bind the owners, their successors, heirs, and assigns.
Second.
I have a motion and second on the question. Any further comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0 with President Black abstaining.
President, I move to approve a waiver of the requirement contained in sections 192-57B2H2, 192-57C13 to provide fill-in paving until such time as the installation of same has been deemed necessary by the township for the health, safety, or welfare of the general public. These improvements shall be made at the owner's expense. This is a covenant running with the land which shall bind the owners, their successors, heirs, and assigns.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the question. Any further comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Vice President Black abstaining. Just would like to also point out that these waivers are not contrary to the public interest and they maintain the purpose and intent of the subdivision and land development ordinance. And that brings us to number 6.
And Mr. President, I would move to approve SLD docket number 2020-02, minor subdivision plan for Richard and Linda Hammond, 1229 Rossmoyne Road, contingent upon the following: providing a copy of the recorded driveway joint use agreement, providing the $1,000 fee in lieu of recreation land, and providing the executed standard stormwater facilities and BMP's maintenance and monitoring agreement.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the question. Any further comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Vice President Black abstaining. Moving on to B, Dan.
Okay. Yeah. Next plan is the subdivision and land development for Lower Allen Commons, formerly known as Bonton site. You see in the center of the screen here. Property includes not only the site that formerly held Bonton, but also the Bonefish Grill and the Texas Roadhouse are on the same property by lease. Plan up here. plan up on the screen now?
Not yet. There we go.
Okay. A couple different sheets here to show you, just in general. You can see the shaded areas, and the scale's a little tough to read. This is where you can see the outline of the old building, and the driveway formerly came straight across here, across the front of the building. This plan will relocate the driveway somewhat offset like this, and provide utility connections to the sites. This is to set the stage for the future development here. This shows how the parcel will not actually be subdivided into different parcels, but there will be lease areas on the parcel. So this is showing where the different units for lease would be on the site, and where the common access areas would be. And then this is just some of the site development with utilities and stormwater drainage. There's no actual development of buildings proposed with this plan. This is to create the leased areas and put in some of the infrastructure, the sanitary sewer connection, and the stormwater management. And you can see the stormwater from the site will be collected into a new storm system, but tied into the existing system that runs along the side of the property along Route 15, and it goes down to this basin down at the corner of Gettysburg Road and Gettysburg Road, right next to the Route 15, where it used to be the infield of the interchange. It's actually owned by PennDOT, but there is an agreement in process with PennDOT to be able to use that, to modify that, to provide additional stormwater management from the site. There are 5 waivers listed. These are going to be identical to the next plan. One of these, the board did consider already, the waiver of the financial security. The others are listed there, and Planning Commission did recommend that the waivers be approved, and also recommended approval of the plan, provided that all the comments are addressed. Adam Davis is the engineer for the plan. He's also in the meeting here. If there are any questions for him or for me.
Mr. Engineer, I have a question about waiver number 4. I understand with the Planning Commission's recommendation, our discussion on it the other night. Would you just, you're comfortable with removing the additional 2 feet on the spaces that abut an island?
Most of the, well, see, on this plan, it's these written area here in front of the Bonefish Grill. It's only a few parking spaces, and they're being modified. And that's been typical on other plans where there's an existing parking lot being modified. It's difficult to design that extra space in without just losing spaces. If you're starting with a clean slate on a fresh site, then you can design it to meet the ordinance, but to try to retrofit it, it is difficult and just ends up in the loss of parking spaces.
I guess I had a question with respect to, I think I understand this plan. I'm not sure I understand it in the next. The waiver of the requirement to provide financial security. Who's driving this? Is it our development authority driving this plan?
Yes. And that was the rationale, because it is the development authority, that the township would not require them to post financial security.
Okay. I just don't want to give the, I don't want to be criticized for saying that we don't have to do what everybody else has to do when they come in. We've had this issue in the past.
Yeah, actually, when for the Rossmore Elementary School, the school district requested and was granted the same waiver because they were the school district.
Mm-hmm. I think we know where they live.
Leaving town and leaving the project unfinished.
Yeah. Okay.
So in this case, I mean, the development authorities that are customers, so to speak, here on this plan, right?
Yes, and there would be additional expense if they were required to post that financial security.
Right. And the Planning Commission, I assume, I mean, obviously, put this through to us in this form, correct? Well, commissioners, I would be looking to take a motion, take action on these items as well this evening, if anybody would be inclined to kick that off with a motion.
Well, I would make the motion that we approve a waiver of the requirement contained in section 192-24C to submit a preliminary plan.
Second,
I have a motion by Commissioner Shin and a second by Commissioner Black on the question. If there's any further comment, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Number 2.
I move that we approve a waiver of the requirement in section 192-44 to provide financial security for proposed improvements.
Second,
I have a motion and a second on the question. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Number 3.
I move that we approve a modification of the requirement contained in section 192-57C9 to provide sidewalks along all street frontage to allow pedestrian access facilities as shown on the plan until such time as the installation of same has been deemed necessary by the township township for the health, safety, or welfare of the general public.
second,
I have a motion from Commissioner Shin, second from Commissioner
Black.
Black on the question. Any further discussion or comments?
Yeah, let me just ask the question, Mr. President. I turned the page and there was some verbiage at the top of
I see that, yes.
yeah, please amend your motion, Rick.
All right, if you'll bear with me then. These improvements shall be made at the owner's expense. This is a covenant running with the land which shall bind the owners, their successors, heirs, and assigns. My apologies, Commission.
No, that was by both of us. I second that also.
Therefore, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor on number 3,
Aye.
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 Oh, excuse me. Sorry, Commissioner Kutz, forgot. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Number 4.
Well, I would make a motion to approve a waiver from the requirement in section 192-59C2 that each parking space adjacent to an island at the end of a parking row have an additional 2 feet of width.
Second,
I have a motion from Commissioner Black.
I think it was Shin and second
Shin.
Black.
Chin
Right.
check.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I have a second by Commissioner Black. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Shall I round it out?
Yes.
Coming around the last race there. I'd make a motion that we approve a waiver of the requirement in section 192-58E, paren 10, that planting islands and beds be designed to collect stormwater runoff from adjacent paved parking areas.
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And then also, these waivers and modifications are not contrary to the public interest, and they maintain the purpose and intent of the subdivision and land development ordinance, which then brings us to number 6.
Rick, you want about 1,000?
Okay, I'm sorry, I was thinking of something else. I would be glad to. I make a motion that we approve subdivision land development docket number 2020-03. Subdivision and land development plan for Lower Allen Commons contingent upon the following. 1, providing documentation of PennDOT approval for the sanitary sewer easement across PennDOT right-of-way and for the disposal of excess PennDOT right-of-way along Gettysburg Road. 2, Lower Allen Township Authority approval. 3, providing documentation of the use of the basin and PennDOT right-of-way for stormwater management purposes. And 4, approval of the erosion and sediment pollution control plan by Cumberland County Conservation District.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Stan and a second from Commissioner Black. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Dan, we're moving on to C.
Okay. Okay, you seeing a plan on the screen?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
This is the lot right along the frontage on Gettysburg Road, which is along the top here. This is the main drive heading off of Gettysburg Road, directly opposite Zimmerman Drive. So, and this is the secondary driveway over near the Burger King. So it's this lot in the front between the two driveways for Spring Hill Suites Hotel. It's a 124 rooms. I believe it's 5-story. Going to have one access drive right here on the south side off of the internal access drive. So there will not be any additional access from the street. The Planning Commission did review the plan, the same waivers and modifications that were requested and approved on the previous plan were also here. And then a couple other minor comments. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of the plan subject to addressing those comments. Adam Davis, the engineer, is also on the call here. Questions for him or for me?
Hey Dan, this is Adam. I just want to clarify that I don't think we're requesting the financial security waiver for this lot like we did on the other one.
Great.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question.
So all the rest of them are the same except for the financial security.
Adam, you're
Just
reading my mind.
Because there wouldn't be any financial security. Yeah, okay. I was reading the Planning Commission comments.
Okay,
Yep.
so let me
I thought I
clarify
would
that.
jump the gun on it.
And may I interject, Mr. President? I just want to make sure with the Assistant Manager Trone, I thought the reason there may be a waiver for that is I think that this is a requirement of the subdivision plan that the Development Authority provide an approved plan to the Spring Hill Suites developer.
What are you asking me, Steve?
No, I just want to make sure before we eliminate the waiver on for number 2, the financial security, it was my understanding that the Development Authority has to provide an approved plan. So is that something that is actually on the developer, or is that something that that is a waiver for the Development Authority?
I think in this case, there will not be financial security required. There's no public improvements there.
Right.
Previous plan, there was a stormwater management plan and utilities, but that's not the case here. So there's nothing we would require financial security for.
All right, thank you.
Well, then
Okay,
we don't have to deal with the waiver.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
that's another reason we're not dealing with it. Okay.
so that saves, well,
It's omitted, right?
it is omitted, but now will you please explain to me why we wouldn't require that in the first place now? I understand the accident of not putting it on there.
Well, financial security is for public improvements. Oftentimes it's work in the public right of way or new streets or storm sewers. And the previous subdivision plan did have the stormwater management on and off the site. But it's all being done on the other plan. On this particular plan here, the hotel plan, there are no public improvements. It's only
Okay, gotcha. So we don't require these for just general buildings.
And this is going to be, we've seen this on the previous plan because it's this is in the footprint of the previous plan.
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
So the public improvements to serve this site are actually on the other plan.
got it.
I understand it and satisfied. Commissioners, does everybody understand what we're doing here?
I'm happy with that.
Okay, we are scratching number 2 out of that discussion and action. So we would move on to,
Well, I'd be glad
actually go back to number 1.
I'd be glad to move that we approve a waiver of the requirement contained in section 192-24C to submit a preliminary plan.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Shin and a second from Commissioner Kutz. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Then we would skip to number 3.
I'll make a motion, we approve a modification of the requirement contained in section 192-57C, paren 9, to provide sidewalks along all street frontage, to allow pedestrian access facilities as shown on the plan, until such time as the installation of same has been deemed necessary by the township for the health, safety, or welfare of the general public. These improvements shall be made at the owner's expense. This is a covenant running with the land which shall bind the owners, their successors, heirs, and assigns.
Second.
I have a motion from Shin and a second from Commissioner Kutz. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
I'd like to make a motion, we approve a waiver from the requirement in section 192-59C, paren 2, that each parking space adjacent to an island at the end of a parking row have an additional 2 feet of width.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Shin and a second from Commissioner Kutz. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Make a motion, we approve a waiver of the requirement in section 192-58E, paren 10, that planting islands and beds be designed to collect stormwater runoff from adjacent paved parking areas.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Shin, a second from Commissioner Kutz. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And as well, these waivers modifications are not contrary to the public interest, and they maintain the purpose and intent of the subdivision and land development ordinance. And that brings us to number 6 of this.
Well, I would be glad to make a motion to approve subdivision land development docket number 2020-04, land development plan for Spring Hill Suites, 3535 Gettysburg Road, contingent upon the following. Number 1, providing documentation of the easements, providing access to the property. Number 2, providing documentation that the traffic impact study has been completed. Number 3, Lower Allen Township Authority approval.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Shin, a second from Commissioner Kutz. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And I would just like to tell everybody, thank you for your patience getting through all of it. Thank you to the commissioners participating in that. I think that will probably be one of our largest set of items we've had to go through on Zoom.
Well, Mr. President, I'm bowled over by the technology that Dan used there. Thank you, Dan.
Yes, thank you, staff and Dan and everybody for getting us through that. So, E?
I'm going to pass control back to Aaron. I have the next item.
Okay.
Item D is the potential replacement for the rooftop unit number 2 on the municipal building. Just to give you a little background on this, we have 3 rooftop units. The other two run about 70 to 85% of the time. This one runs 100% of the time. And it's taken the most maintenance over the past 12 years that it's been in. And it services the second floor, which includes the EMS area. It was budgeted at $127,000 for this year. So just by virtue, in a normal year, this will be coming to the board for approval to go out to bid because of the size of the project. Certainly things are a little different this year. It's not a normal year. But just a couple other items on the background. The price is a little bit volatile. We won't know for sure until we actually bid it. Just in calendar year 2019, the price went up 3 times. The 127,000 was the best guess at the time the budget was prepared last year. And just in the last few weeks, Scott Mercer and I were putting together the specs, and we came upon another option that we thought we should add. It's an advanced purification system, air filtering. It's called a needlepoint bipolar ionization air system. And it's not a new technology, but it's kind of high quality, cleaning the air. And one of the things it takes care of is virus. And my guess is that this is going to be much more common in these types of units going forward because of what it does. So we decided to add that. So that was not in the budget. That's about $2,700 to the cost. But we thought given what it does, and particularly since it services the EMS area in the second floor, that would be kind of the most critical part of the building to have that type of filtering. That we felt that additional cost was going to be warranted. Whether or not we're still close to that budget amount, just given what's happened with supply chain and equipment and materials over the past 6 or 8 months since the budget was prepared, we don't know for sure. That's what is in the budget, but we wanted to bring it up for discussion before we moved forward with actually putting it out to bid. I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can on that.
Sounds like we need it.
Do you have any idea where something like this will come in at?
Not exactly. We know that 127,000 was the best estimate, probably about August of last year when the budget was put together.
And the addition,
2,700 would be, even if the original budget price didn't change, that would be in addition.
Right. Okay. And so what we'd be looking to do tonight is authorize staff to advertise for what essentially is a budgeted item. And then we see where we're at once we get the estimates, I assume. So
yeah, you would still have the option that this isn't the final go ahead. We still have the option whether or not to accept bids.
Right.
And that's how you find out what the true cost is if it goes out to bid.
Dan, that air purifier, that's because the windows in that do not open?
No, it's used to provide it's another layer, a better layer of air filtering on these systems, and it's been around for a while. It's not a new technology, but there's additional cost to it, and in some cases, if it's incorporated in the design, it makes the unit operates more efficiently on the.
And what about the filters for it?
What about?
What about the filters for it? What kind of cost are they?
Well, it's actually it's not a filter like you would think of, like a paper filter that it gets dirty and you pull it out. It's a electronic equipment that does that.
Oh, okay.
It's an ionization process. It's not simply just running air through a filter medium.
Okay, so you don't have to change filters or anything in it.
No.
Well, I'm ready to move.
Commissioners, yes, I was just going to say at this point, if there's no further discussion, I'd be looking to for a motion to get moving on this.
Be willing to make a motion authorizing staff to advertise for bids for the packaged rooftop unit / outdoor air handling unit number 2, RTU-2 replacement project at the Municipal Services Center.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Shen and a second from Vice
I have
President.
another question.
And I
is it
have,
only-
I do have a motion and a second. I have Commissioner Holtzman. You have a question?
Yes, is this only gonna supply or take care of the EMS section, or is this gonna take care of the whole building?
This particular unit services primarily the second floor. There are 3 different units that service the whole building.
I'm sorry, can I have that again, please?
There are 3 rooftop units that service the
Right.
entire different areas of the building. This particular unit services most of the second floor, which includes
Okay.
EMS.
All right. Okay,
Was that it, Commissioner Holtzman?
yes.
Okay. So if there's are there any other questions?
I have one, Mr. President. Dan, does the current unit still work?
Current unit is still running, yes.
Okay, so I don't think the bids will come in high, but if they do come in high, we still have the option of limping along with the present unit.
Correct.
Okay, I'm done.
I don't know how long it'll limp, but it's like driving an old car. It's still running, but I don't know when it'll stop.
If you can't see the street through the floorboards, you're good, still good. Call for the question, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner Black. Thank you, Commissioner Shen. I will call for the question. All those in favor on the question, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Flint. We're moving on to Director Grove for some finance discussion.
Good evening. I think you would all agree that financial condition is a logical concern in this time of unknowns and uncertainty. To attain a strong financial condition, just like a household, you need to make a plan, stick to it. It takes years to get to there, but there's no doubt that the board has achieved this. We are in a very strong financial condition currently. Took years to get there, but we do have sufficient reserves that have been gathered specifically to deal with challenges like we are now facing. And we can do that without disrupting our spending plans. Unless, of course, you want to, you can. If you look at things purely from a financial perspective, now is an ideal time to prudently maintain our budgetary spending plan, even if that adds to our planned budgeted deficit. Now, those unknowns and uncertainties, they add challenges when trying to forecast the extent of what that deficit might be. But I really see this going into 2 phases. I don't think we're going to get into phase 2. If I'll just refer to it as a lockdown or the shelter in place or whatever you want to refer to it. If that ends, let's say before maybe Memorial Day or certainly before summer, I think the effect on us will be more of an inconvenience than a general problem. I think if you were to graph the economic flow, I think it would look like a V. After the initial sharp drop off, we would see a fairly quick recovery. To add some optimism to that, I think it looks like the federal stimulus and other measures are having the desired impact. However, if this drags out for a long time, I'm seeing no evidence that it will, but if it would go into the summer, I think it would be a different story and we would be facing much more difficult problems. But if you look at the revenue loss formula in my memo, you'd see that the estimate at this time consists of a flat $18,000 per week. This is in lost revenue, plus an exponential factor that increasingly inflates as the weeks pile up. So I would say if we're still in lockdown around Memorial Day, no matter what you do tonight, we should regroup then and revisit this subject. Expenditures will decrease also. I have a rough guess, especially if we don't go into phase 2, a more serious problem economically. I would give a rough guess that no less than 25% of our revenue loss will be offset with reduced expenditures that will naturally occur. I know, for example, I had the primarily bulk of my training budget has been completely eliminated. Those training opportunities aren't going to be available this year. I'm sure there's many other, well, I know for sure there's many other situations like that, overtime, part-time labor that is contributing there. If the board wants to take remediation actions, the memo provided several ideas and staff is here to assist. So with that, I'll turn it back over.
Rick, I was encouraged by the fact that I finally see how algebra can help me.
All that money my parents invested in me finally paid off.
So when you're referencing the, just so I understand what I'm looking at, because we received a memo with a spreadsheet as well separately. When you're referring to the remediation plan, and I guess the manager can chime in with this one, you're referring to that as well?
No, this would be with no remediation. I mean, from a financial standpoint, it's not necessary. If you want to do it, that's fine. But this is my current best estimate of our revenue loss.
President, I've been working with staff to come up with some options in case we do need to reduce our expenditures to meet the loss in revenues. There was some discussion, I know you've probably seen in the news that Cumberland County and Dauphin County have implemented furloughs. There was some question about whether we would need to go in that direction. I don't think we need to go to that direction. Number one, our folks are working. We don't have any departments that are shut down anymore because of the coronavirus. Public safety has been working all along. As you know, our public works department went back to full operation last Thursday, and starting, I believe, Monday, Aaron and John can correct me if I'm incorrect, but I believe CED will be starting back full time because of permitted construction. So is that correct on Monday?
Actually, construction resumes Friday, May 1st.
I understand, but I mean, our staff is starting on Monday, right?
We have a discussion in that regard, so we hadn't discussed for sure.
All right.
That's
point being, construction is allowed to resume on Friday. So our folks, we're expecting a lot of permits from people that have been waiting. Our folks are going to be busy. So really, we don't have a lot of staff that we could furlough. In my spreadsheet that I sent you, it's broken down into 3 categories. We have operating expenses, capital outlays, and personnel. And I've been working with staff to get some ideas on where we might be able to reduce expenditures. There are some personnel items on there. I'm going to suggest that we consider freezing hiring for the remainder of the year, or at least until we get a grasp on where our losses are with our tax revenue. There's also a couple of capital outlay items, but really those things are deferrals rather than just cuts. Everything that's on the capital replacement schedule needs to be done eventually, and anything that we move to 2021 is just going to bump something else and push things downstream, which might work, might not. It all depends. Things like the rooftop unit might work. We might be able to keep it running for another year or two, but when it goes, it's going to go, and we're going to need to replace it. So capital is not a great place to find cuts, but it can be done. Operating, and as you saw on the spreadsheet, operating supplies, and I think, and Rick Grove alluded to it, there's some expenses that were down simply because of the shutdown. Training, all of our training budgets have thousands of dollars available to be cut because things have been canceled. Same thing is true of our fuel budgets because we haven't been running vehicles. Even our utility budgets for some of the buildings that were completely shut down, we're going to see savings in electricity, water, that sort of thing. So the recommendations, I should say, the suggestions are there for you. As Rick said, his estimate right now, based on a return to work or a shutdown end date of May the 8th, I believe, is around just under $110,000. Not a lot of money, as he was saying, fiscally. It's a very small percentage of our fund balance, so nothing would need to be done necessarily. But if you want to make cuts, we provided some options for you.
Well, so I understand the spreadsheet that you sent, the target and then the suggested possible cuts. The target is based on that $108,000.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so all those targets for the various broader departments, and then the cuts would just be some sort of means to be able to get to that, which, by the way, before I go on, if this is the way I'm reading it, I would like to thank you for, I thought you did a very good job putting this together and giving us so many options. It looks like, and a wealth of options should we choose to go that route. And if things get worse, it looks like there's some significant play in there with those options. So thank you, Tom, for.
I have to thank staff for sitting down and taking a look at their budgets and working on this. They put some time into it and thought into it. So as you can see, our options are much more than what we actually need to offset the loss.
Yeah, and I appreciate you taking the time and digging into that for our residents, the taxpayers and stakeholders in the township. I don't want to dominate the time here, but I do want to say this, and then I'll quiet down and let everybody else chime in. But I just will say that I know $108,000, in the scheme of things, doesn't seem like a lot of money, and the township over the years has obviously got itself into a decent shape to be able to withstand this type of burden. But I'm leaning towards a very conservative approach here, in that I believe, and this is my thought, I'm not suggesting we do a particular thing or not, is that we really keep an eye on this, and that I think for every dollar, even if it's $108,000 and that's all it is in the end, if we can come up with some offset, I think that it would be an appropriate thing to do for our residents, so that we continue to maintain our prosperous situation financially in the township, because down the road, that $108,000 will have to be filled at some point. And that's just my thought on that. But again, thank you for putting this together, and I'll just kind of let everybody else chime in.
Well, Tom, Rick, under the personnel, the comment with respect to CED, understand then that as of, we think, notwithstanding Mr. Eby's input, we think that by Monday, CED is going to be back to work. Is that what we're looking at?
Well, they've actually been working. They've been working from home.
Okay.
What I'm talking about is having them back in the office.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I was seeing where you said there'd be an onslaught of applications, and I wondered if they would be able to be handled at home. But if they're coming back to the building, then will COVID notwithstanding, will you have people making appointments again and meeting them at the door? We're going to still keep the township building closed?
Yes, well, the township building will be closed until the stay-at-home order is lifted.
Got it. That's right. I don't have anything.
I will put out there, some of you may not have, the spreadsheet that President Vallone is referring to was sent out in an email today. Some of you may not have seen it, but if you have access to your email right now, you can open the attachment. There's actually 2 tabs on that. One of them presents the information by department. Second tab presents it by type of expenditure. it groups all of the operating expenditures together and groups all of the capital and all the personnel together. So same information presented two different ways.
For some reason, I think I only got the one tab where it shows the three columns, actually. Expenditures, et cetera, target cuts, and then notes. There's another spreadsheet in there somewhere?
Yeah, down at the bottom, there should be tabs. I don't know.
Oh, tabs.
You can open your tabs. There's a second tab that one
can't,
says by department, the second tab says by category.
I can't get it to move now. Let's see that. All right, I'll keep looking.
Anybody else want to chime in here?
Mr. President.
Yes, Commissioner Kutz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to echo your comments, especially in this time of uncertainty. And while we project 108,000, we truly don't know the economic devastation that this could cause. It could be worse. I agree wholeheartedly. Everyone around the country is doing what they can to tighten their belts. I think as businesses are required to do that, government should be just the same. And I think we should make every effort to make sure that we are being proper stewards with the taxpayers' money. And when there's less money coming in, we need to do our part by reducing outlays accordingly. So I would agree with that. I have a couple of ideas on how to do that, and appreciate the manager spreadsheet now and appreciate some of the information there. And then my question for the manager would be, you had mentioned that the hiring freeze for the year was a possibility. Is that an item, since those personnel are yet to be hired, is that appropriate to be discussed in open session, or is that required to be deferred to executive session?
Well, the solicitor can answer this, but these are not employees, so.
Right. Generally speaking, I'm sorry, just to echo what the manager is saying. Yeah, the executive session applies to individual personnel, not personnel looked at in general terms.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I see we have the police captain and public safety director with us tonight. The items suggested for the hiring freeze or personnel items are related to the hiring of for EMS, a patrolman, and for PSO. And those are the three big ones we have. We have Public Works and Park not hiring summer help as secondary ones. I'm curious if either the public safety director or police captain would care to discuss if these in your minds are possibilities. What's given before us was a suggestion to delay hiring for the police, the new officer, until January, the EMS delayed until July, and the PSO deferred as well. And if you guys have any thoughts, I would welcome to hear them.
Yeah, I'll take that first, Commissioner. We think that there are, in terms of pushing it back, I don't know if I would be 100% supportive of saying no hires to the end of the year. I think we have a problem with the police hire to begin with, because the testing has been canceled through the county. So we don't currently have a list any longer. The board remembers that, but we would have to test through the county chiefs first to develop a list. I don't see that. I don't know when that would happen, but I don't see that happening towards fall, later fall, maybe. So at the least, I would like a reopener considered, but by the board, potentially by the fall. And the same thing with the PSO. When I look at the spreadsheet, I say it says PSO deferred. I would recommend that we allow the part-time PSOs to be hired. We have a full-time position open and a replacement. I talked to Captain Worth, and I think we could probably defer that, because if the board remembers, we had said that what we were going to try to do was the part-time position. So to support the volunteers, we actually have been putting PSOs on 24/7, and we've been paying overtime. So to save that overtime, developing some part-time PSO positions would be helpful. On the EMS side, we have a full-time position, actually two that we haven't really filled. So we can defer that. But again, I'd like to see where we are in the fall as to whether or not we can reopen that for consideration. Instead of saying blanket, let's just not hire for the rest of the year. I'd be interested in seeing what the revenues, we've already identified on the public safety side, probably 155, maybe more than that, $1,000 that we can save in things that we haven't spent and we know we're not going to spend. So I think that there's some availability for some latitude in some of those areas. I certainly agree that we need to do our part to because the community has suffered as well. But I think that where we're talking about delivery of service, the community would suffer there too in some cases if we didn't do that. When we can do that in the operations side. So that would just be my 2 cents. I don't know if
Dave, if the testing is not going to be done, we don't want to hire somebody if we can't get them tested, right?
Well, we couldn't. We have to test. We have to establish a list off of the test, and then the Civil Service Commission would have to convene to recommend that list, and it would come back to the board. And I'm just saying, if depending upon when that happens, I would just would hope that the board could say, okay, you have the test, you have the, because the other problem is, Commissioner, we're looking at least one possible retirement, possibly two between now and the end of the year. I would hate to take that deficit and say that we have made that there's a decision that we can't hire until 2021, depending upon what happens downrange, especially if the revenue and the money would allow for that to happen. So just
how optimistic are you with respect to that testing taking place?
Well, the county chiefs just met a week ago and tried to figure that out. And the problem is that we held it down at Cumberland Valley, and Cumberland Valley shut down. And we don't know if they'll open in the fall or not. So there's this big, we don't know where we would hold it, when we would hold it. So I'm hopeful that we can have the police officer test sometime in the fall, late summer, fall. But that's right now. A month from now, I'll be able to give you a better idea. But right now, we don't know.
Thank you.
If I may, let me clarify something. The spreadsheet that you have does not include part-time PSOs. The hiring freeze is only on new positions that were in the 2020 budget. Of course, if somebody were to leave between, then that would be a replacement, not a new hire. And in fact, would probably benefit us because they would probably be hired at a lower rate, an entry rate. So this does not, the hiring freeze, the word does not include placements, and it doesn't include those which actually are going to help us out. They would save money over. One of the things Dave and I talked about was the difficulty in getting engines out right now, because even the firefighters are a little worried about this virus. So if we don't have the part-time PSOs to help get engines out, we're going to be looking at overtime for our full-timers. So I don't have a problem with the part-time PSOs. In fact, more part-timers we have, probably the better right now, because it would allow us to forego full-time for the time being.
Let me just
Go ahead,
jump
Rick.
in here and explain the like the financial plan as I see it a little bit. We have built up our reserves really to the point where we don't need any more. The plan was not, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but the thought was not to cut services, but to maintain the services in bad financial times. I think, like, for example, when a bond rater comes in and looks at us, they will see that we have plans to expand services. We raise taxes to do that. We have money on hand to cover an economic downturn, but yet we choose not to do it. They might wonder why we build it up. So I think if you're just looking at finances only, I would not jump down the path of cutting services before I really had to. That's just me. I mean, sorry to throw that in there, but I think it's an important thing you need to know.
Any other discussion on this topic?
Mr. President, if I may, I'm just looking at these. It's my opinion that by, this is at least certainly with the police officer, that's a plan to expand service. And they're not going to be available to be hired anyway, I think that makes sense. We don't have a candidate, we can't hire them. So I think that's a cost savings there. And as long as it sounds like we're not going to see a decrease in service level, we did have established service levels we're comfortable with. And as it doesn't sound like this will decrease service levels on the fire side, we're still going to hire part-time PSOs. This just puts the full-time off. And then the EMS and Director, if you'd like to chime in, that'd be great. EMS hiring delayed until July. Do you see that as being a hurdle to service levels as well?
Not till July. In fact, we may be good even until the fall. So we would look at that in terms of service delivery and personnel and scheduling before we would ever come to the board. And we have full-time positions, we have to come to the board anyhow. So.
And I want to throw a curveball, and I don't usually do this, but when we get to discussions like this, I always cringe, and I have now for many, many years. When it comes to service levels, Mr. Manager, I would like to have a session somehow where we actually delineate, we actually sit and figure out what do we mean by measuring, what do we mean by service levels? I don't know how we judge what service levels are. And it's not necessarily for this discussion yet. It's important, I think, to say if we're going to be quantitative about it, how do we qualify what service levels are, so we know how to fill the bill.
I can jump in if you want. We actually had done a pretty comprehensive view of that during the ad hoc committee. So what service levels are and how they're defined are there. Where the board chooses to be in terms of those definitions is really up to the board. So
I think it'd be good to revisit it, honestly.
Yeah, I'd be happy to send that.
Well, when Commissioner Shinn brings, first thing that comes to mind isn't necessarily just the public safety service levels, and that, what does it mean for the entire township? When I first came on board a few years ago, we kicked off some strategic planning session. I think we made it to round 2, and I think it might be a good exercise. We have Commissioner Kutz with us now, maybe to revisit at some point through the middle to end of the year, where maybe we talk about service levels so we can all get on the same page before we get into the next budget. And having said that, it goes without saying, all of us are talking the same language, and that we want to do the best thing for the township and the residents, taxpayers, and everybody involved. So I would, if it's okay with my fellow commissioners, I would just ask staff at this point and the manager to, at the very minimum, unless something comes up, the material that we should know about that deviates from this memo and these numbers, that maybe every 2 weeks at our meeting now, we get some sort of update as to where the COVID crisis and it is going to bring us with these numbers, and just monitor them. And also at the same time, if things do change in some sort of material way off of the if of course the staff, you guys done a great job putting this stuff together, if we can continue dates as to where we would look to have those opportunities to make cuts if we wanted to, and then the board can kind of get a clear picture of it. So I'm not really giving any instruction, Tom. I'm just at this point, just obviously needless to say, saying thank you for staying vigilant with it. And I hope in 2 weeks, maybe we can have a little better picture as to what's going on.
We will certainly keep tabs on this on a regular basis. I don't know that we're going to have good tax information for at least a month. We're a month behind. They're not behind. I don't want to say they're delinquent, but our tax reports are a month behind collections by the time Cumberland County Tax Bureau gets them to us. So we're not going to have any really solid information until beginning of June, probably. on this. And that's going to also depend on when people start going back to work and businesses start ramping up. But I mean, information will come in, albeit slowly, and we'll pass it on to the board. And the spreadsheet that was handed out, or that was sent out today, of course, I wasn't asking for any firm decisions tonight. I think I heard some discussion about the police officer and the public safety folks, and that's good discussion. But this is for you to take home and chew on a while and ask me questions and ask staff questions about what all this means, because I said I gave you way more options than what we actually need. So we can take our time and take a look at them and decide exactly where we want to reduce. The other discussion on service levels, I've in fact intended to do a new strategic planning session in 2021. We did finish the public safety ad hoc committee, so we have that data. My plan this year was to have a recreation ad hoc meeting. We can talk about recreation wants and needs in the township. Unfortunately, that's been put on hold because of the coronavirus shutdown, but I still intend to do it. It just may be later in the year than intended. So I don't know that we're going to have any good, solid information before the budget season, but you know, service levels can always be a discussion. And as Dave said, that was gone into extensively throughout the public safety ad hoc process to talk about service levels. And I don't know that they're right now our service level is, I should say, what has been recommended would get us to service level C for public safety. And I think Dave can probably explain better than me what that means in terms of public safety. But we will have that conversation going forward and look for a strategic planning meeting. One of the reasons I wanted to have it in 2021, and I don't mean to put him on the spot here, but I wanted to give Commissioner Kutz a good year under his belt before we sit down and start talking about service levels. So he deserves at least that much to get you know, a good understanding of the township operations before those meetings take place.
And I just want to add, Tom, I appreciate the spreadsheet, and Rick, all everyone who did work, the department heads who put this together. It's good for us to keep in mind. I guess the only pressing thing, if we really don't need to make any of these decisions tonight, and I think the prudent course is probably the best course here, not to make any rash decisions. So public can rest assured that we'll take these decisions as they come and not make any knee-jerk reactions, I think is the most appropriate course. The one thing, I'm not sure how time pressing it is, and Dan, Mr. Engineer, this would be for you. Public Works and Parks, for the summer help, do you need to have a decision made on that soon? I don't know what your usual timeline for hiring is. Is that something that you need to have an answer from us on soon?
Well, typically they start in May, as soon as school's out, and go into maybe the middle of August when school is back. Obviously, the schedule, even if we were to hire them, is a little different this year, just because of where we are right now. Almost May.
And with the fields out there at LACP, I much of my life to have to do with youth softball, but I guess soccer is big out there, right? And then men's softball. Are we going to see some revenue issues if things don't loosen up like we hope they will?
Yeah, that's a possibility depending on when they can start and how much, you know, can they still use it at the same capacity that they have in the past?
Right.
And depending on what the guidelines are on how they congregate. So there may be some impact there. You know, we won't know what that is till it actually happens.
Right.
Dan, the primary help in the summer, is that primarily just for mowing and basic upkeep around the parks?
Yeah, it's primarily mowing. Usually there's at least one for the parks, one for parks and right-of-ways, or one at LACP and one at the other location. So if we don't hire those two summer help full-time staff have to fill and spend more time mowing and less time doing something else.
Mr. Manager, is that I'm just curious if we usually make the hires in May and these are for mowing, which is important. Is this something you'd like us to decide on tonight on allowing them to go forward?
If you're comfortable with that, we planned on holding off on it. It's going to require more mowing time for our regular full-time employees. May mean we have to defer other projects. But that's just part of the whole experience, I guess, is that we may have to do things a little different this year.
I've eaten up a lot of time. I'm just curious if any of the other commissioners have an opinion on summer help.
I would actually like a stronger recommendation from staff. I have no feel for this whatsoever, and I think perhaps we will get those recommendations at the next meeting, as opposed to picking this apart tonight.
I'm good with that. Tom, obviously you're comfortable with coming up with something for us as you have a better picture in a week or two anyway, right?
We will.
Yeah.
I mean, the items on the sheet are all recommendations. So, I mean,
okay.
I would tell you now at this point that we won't hire them, the part-timers.
Okay.
In all due respect to Director Hall, I like the idea of the hiring freeze, but I'm willing to reserve a caveat. If I think overall, I think we should pull our oars in with respect to hiring, but we'll better know in a couple of weeks, Tom.
Hopefully, yes. If everybody gets back to work and able to make get their paychecks and their holding gets turned in, all that, we'll be back on the sea. But right now, we don't know. We don't know how long it's going to take. I agree with Rick Grove's assertion that it's going to be probably a V-shaped graph. How sharp that upward trend is going to be the question.
Mm-hmm. Well, but some of the revenues, whether we recover or not, for instance, the local PIT, what people haven't been paying doesn't come back in a recovery.
That's correct. Yeah, there's a couple of things. Those are two big areas right there. The earned income tax, local earned income tax is gone. That's not coming back. It's not delayed. Same thing with at least a portion of the local services, which is the $52 a year, but it is proratable. So generally, if somebody starts later in the year, they wouldn't have to pay the entire amount. Same thing goes if they are unemployed during a certain portion. That amount is somewhat less. I don't know, my numbers are old, so Rick did some refiguring. My numbers are old, so they're probably a little higher than his. But I originally, we had estimated about $40,000 lost in LST. That might be slightly revised downward. The quicker people get back to work, the lower that number is.
Right.
I also wanted to point out that lest anybody forget that, well, actually, I have it next on the agenda, so I'll wait.
So I'm prepared to move on if everybody, I wanted to make sure we for this item because of the nature of it. But again, it goes without saying, thank you for the work you're putting into this. It's a good start for helping the board to understand what's going on. And I have confidence that in the end, we'll make the right decisions. And thanks for all the flexibility and the work that you've put into this. Thank you. So moving on, Mr. Manager, you've got some news regarding property tax extension, correct?
I wish I did have news. The Act 15 that the governor signed last week did a number of things. One of the things that it did was it allowed local taxing jurisdictions to do two things: either extend the discount period on the real estate tax, or waive penalties. Now, the discount period is allowed to be extended all the way until August the 31st. We would also be able to waive any penalties as long as the tax bill, I'm talking about real estate taxes only now, as long as the tax bill was paid by December the 31st. My feeling is that we should do whatever the county does, because our taxes are on the same bill. And this could cause a whole host of headaches for taxpayers and the tax collector if we did one thing and they did another. Without getting too deeply into an example, if we, let's say we extend our discount period and they don't, then a taxpayer thinks that everything has been extended. They bring in a check for the discount amount for both taxing jurisdictions. The tax collector cannot accept that check now because the county portion would be underpaid. She cannot accept a check for anything less than the full amount of the tax. So I wanted to do whatever they did. I did speak with Commissioner Eichelberger last week. They do understand the deadline coming up is the 30th. They want to have a decision by then. I spoke to them again today. I panicked a little bit because I hadn't heard anything from them. And my understanding is that they have a finance committee meeting scheduled for tomorrow, at which time they expect to have a decision. So Rick Grove can weigh in a little bit on this. I'm a little concerned because our discount period is ending on Thursday. And I'm not sure what we can do retroactively to extend that. If the county decides to extend it, we come back then and extend it with a ratification in 2 weeks.
That's a very interesting question, because if we do it retroactively, we're going to have people who pay the face value but would have been entitled to the discount. So I don't know how it would be possible, I guess, to identify them, but there may be quite a few of them. Our largest bulk of taxpayers pay in the discount, so they'll pay by the end of this month. I suspect many of them will extend that and will not pay it until right before the penalty goes on, because that's why you do the discount. It's financially very advantageous. It's 2%. So to extend that would be even better for them. So it's kind of a tough question. I mean, those who would be listening would think, well, do I roll the dice and not pay it? Or do I pay it and be safe? So it does create a dilemma both for us and the taxpayer.
Yeah, and maybe we can get some direction here from the solicitor. I don't know. Can the board can the board take action tonight to direct me to follow whatever the county decides to do? If they make a decision prior to the 30th, that we can take the same action and then ratify it, or does this, would this be better put aside until the next public meeting?
No, I think you need to put it back anyway, because you need a resolution. And the way I read the new statute, the act was effective, I think, the 21st. You have 30 days to take action. So that would cover your next meeting. But I agree. I mean, it seems to me you've got to coordinate with the county, because you have to have some uniformity. But you have time to act, because it's giving you, I think it was signed on April 21st. So you're well within that 30 days at your next meeting.
Right.
Could this, Steve, be retroactive? So if we pass this resolution at the next meeting, that it would cover the period from the first till the date of that meeting? Or would that be an ex post facto problem?
No, but I think you can always do the refund. I think of ex post facto is if you're doing something, punitive to a resident, the law would not allow that. But this is telling you, and again, it's always timing. The governor didn't sign it to the 21st. You're meeting timely but you have 30 days to act. So I think they're looking at this as, that even if you had to refund to some people or give them a credit, you could still do it. In other words, the people paid, but they didn't, you wanted to extend it, you still could. But again, it wasn't, I wish this has been done sooner, because it was, the other thing that bothered me was they waited so long because the other parts of the act finally proved what we're doing, having Zoom meetings, but they waited forever and the governor didn't sign it until last week. So the 30-day period just began to run. So I think all the municipalities are sort of, rushing around to see what you need to do. But the action that you're required is to take a resolution. So, I mean, I think the board could direct you to do that and perhaps, enact it at your next meeting. And then decide whether if you want to, in the resolution saying we're taking the action that the county does. I think that's probably the best way to handle it, but you can't really do the resolution until your May meeting.
Could we give that authorization contingent tonight, contingent?
Oh yeah, because
I
mean, the resolution hasn't even been written yet. So yeah, you're directing the staff to do it.
Right, but I got you. So, we would direct the staff to do it as soon as the county comes down with what they're going to do.
Right, because whatever you do, you can't enact a resolution until your May meeting. You're not going to meet before that.
Right, but the resolution would have to be specific to one scenario or another, right?
Right, but I'm saying, but if you're directing the staff to prepare a resolution, you're saying consistent with the county, and then take action at your May meeting.
Understood. Thank you for sticking with that. I appreciate that. Yeah, I understand. Director Grove, when we budget for the property taxes, do you just basically go based on the prior year of how many people took the discount and then use that number, and then how many people pay penalty, and does that number also get figured in a estimate on our budget on the revenue side?
Correct. It's all based upon the trends over the years. Real estate tax is particularly predictable. I would imagine that to move the discount back to August 31st, including interest lost, would be about $12,250.
Okay. That's what I was
So
getting.
not a whole lot of money, really.
Commissioners, what do you think?
Well, maybe we should ask it this way. I mean, I think it would, is anybody opposed to extending the discount period or waiving penalties, or in favor of them? I don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe you feel strongly about doing what you want to do and not necessarily what you
I think we should mirror what the county is doing. If the drop dead date for us is, my only concern is, if I understand this correctly, the normal drop dead date would be the end of this month.
That's correct. Starting May 1st, the real estate taxes would be due at face, not at discount.
Okay.
What Rick is saying was that, if the township has not taken some action, even if we do take action, it's going to be tough to get the word out to everybody. But if we don't take action, folks come in and pay it at face because it's past April 30th, and we do extend the discount period, we'll owe them refunds.
We don't have the ability to do, what do you call those calls, Tom? I know what I call them.
Well, we do. The problem with our current call system is that it's by subscription. So only people that have signed up are going to get the message. So we do use that. Plus we use Facebook, and we use, and in this case, I'd probably actually do a press release as well.
Yeah, I think that we should make the decision to go ahead and get the resolution together and extend it, and hope that we, hit everybody we can hit, especially with the press release, and maybe get the media over here, and see if we can get them to help us get the word out. People watch television, and see things online. So I'm in favor of doing because this is unprecedented. and we need to be sensitive. And I know you are, Tom. I know you are.
Is there any commissioner opposed to following the county's guidance on this matter? What action would we need? Just a simple verbal?
I think you need Mr. President, I think you need a motion directing staff to draft the resolution so you have it at your next meeting and just give them the guidance that you intend to follow the same direction that the county takes.
Yeah, if you're looking for wording, it would be direction to draft a resolution consistent with the county's resolution.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. President, I just have a question for the manager.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Kutz.
Mr. Manager, do you have any inkling as to which way the county's going to fall on this?
I do not. I mean, I think everybody's knee-jerk reaction or gut reaction is to extend it because everybody, you know, the people that are suffering, but you do so with the knowledge that you're giving up revenue. And that's tough as well when you've got people that we've got staff out there working and things like that. But I think the greater concern here is going to be for the taxpayers. So if I had to guess, I'd say they're probably going to extend it, but that would just be a speculation on my part.
You know, I have to say, as having been part of the boards that suffered through sticking with that fund balance through thick and thin, I'm grateful for the discipline that staff has helped the boards that I've served on to be disciplined, and it's showing now.
Well, I for one hope the county does follow through so that our residents can get that little bit of a reprieve on the tax bill.
So, Tom, we haven't voted on this yet, have we?
You have a motion and a second.
I have a motion and a second. Commissioner, are you satisfied with your discussion at this point?
I'm sorry?
I'm asking Commissioner Cook.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
My concern is I'm in favor of extending it, and my concern is if the county doesn't, that we're directing staff to act in accordance with the county and not extend it if they happen not to extend it.
So you would like to extend it regardless of what the county says? Is that what you're looking at?
I would, yes.
Okay, well, Commissioner.
That's a good point. That's a good point. If we're doing this for our residents,
yeah,
and we have the option, does it really matter other than the logistics of it? Does it really matter what the county's doing?
It matters. It's more than a small headache for the tax collector.
Okay, so you're saying the matter is in the logistics is really significant.
It can be. I mean, we figured, well, at least the tax collector's estimate is she's probably received over 90%, 90 to 95% of the taxes during the discount period because most real estate taxes come in from mortgage companies. They tend to pay during the discount period. So I don't know how many people it would affect, but unless you really educate the public, if they think that everybody has extended it and they come in with a check for a certain amount and it's not enough, she can't accept the check. And then they have to go back and rewrite the check, and it is a logistical nightmare. We'd get through it if you feel strongly about extending it, regardless of what the county does. We'll get through it.
Well, I have a motion and a second still on the floor. Who made my second?
I did. Ed Black.
Commissioner Black, thank you for reminding me. I'm assuming the second still stands, so I'm going to call for the question. If there's no further discussion or comments.
Mr. President, just to be clear, this is to follow
Yes.
the county's guidance. This is to direct staff to write the motion to,
Consistent with the county's direction, right?
and my understanding will be at the next meeting, if the county happens not to extend it and we wish to have discussion on that, we just simply not approve the resolution, correct?
To do that.
Yes, and then
We could bring this up again then, that night, couldn't we?
Yes.
Certainly.
Well, then, Mr. President, I'm satisfied to move forward with that understanding that we can bring this up again if we're dissatisfied with the county decision.
very good. And thank you for sticking with that, Commissioner Kutz, and bringing all that information to light. I think it's important that we understand it so we know what's going to happen in 2 weeks. Thank you. So I'm going to call for the question if there's no further comments or discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. And at this point, before we go into commissioner reports, are we still planning on going into executive session? There's an item listed.
No, that was a reserve on there in case you wanted to discuss any particular current employees as far as the budget cuts. If there's no current employees you want to discuss, there's no need for an executive session.
Great.
Mr. President, I had one item I was reserving for the executive session that I thought related to current personnel. Would it be possible to convene it, even if just to ask that one question?
If it's a direct, yeah, I mean, it's my understanding that if there's a specific personnel discussion, that it has to be an executive session. And if you, Commissioner, have a question, in terms of personnel matter regarding the budgetary implications that we have on the executive, then absolutely we will go into executive session.
Well, it has to be about that issue, right? Mr.
Correct.
It would have to be about the coronavirus budgetary implication on personnel matters regarding a specific personnel, correct?
It doesn't have to be about that issue. It can be about any issue as long as you announce what it is.
Okay, I back down.
Okay.
How are we going to do an executive session?
Everybody that doesn't belong in the executive session will be removed from the meeting.
Got it.
So the point, if, for example, we were going to come back and take action, Aaron would place everybody back in the waiting room until we came back and then bring them into the meeting. If there is no action to take, she'll simply remove them from the meeting, and then we will not need to come back again an open meeting.
Thank you.
All right. So we will be having an executive session at this point. So commissioner reports. I'll just start with our recording secretary tonight, Tina Thomas.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. I'll go to Assistant Manager Trone and our host of the evening. And by the way, thank you again for doing such a great job in this meeting flowing.
Thanks. Just, I had sent this email out, but for the public, we received a $50,000 grant from Tri-County. They received it from PennDOT for the Gettysburg Road Corridor study. I think you see that in your list of kind of cuts or whatever, that it's deferred, but it actually is just, it's a covered cost since they paid 100% of the study, and we have about a year to complete that. So I would expect it to start this year and move into next year as well.
Congratulations, Aaron.
Dan helped too.
Oh, and Dan.
That's all I have.
Thank you. And thanks again for hosting the meeting. Director Grove.
Nothing else tonight, thank you.
Director Flint, or Engineer Flint.
Just one project to update you on the Gettysburg Road relocation. There has been some work going on. So we had a pre-construction meeting last week. Today we had the required COVID safety meeting for the involved parties, which is part of the new process with construction that are approved to continue moving forward. And we'll actually have on-site pre-construction meeting tomorrow, so you will see activity starting on the project.
Is that it, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. And thanks again for walking us through all those dockets tonight and those waivers. Mr. Eby?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to mention for clarity, the group that does building and zoning compliance has been working throughout the shutdown. Some persons not full-time, some full-time. We have been accepting applications and processing them. We're only releasing permits for projects that may continue because they're exempt or so forth. We have been doing inspections on critical jobs that are required or allowed to be continuing. So what Tom was alluding to is he and Aaron and Dave Hall and I are going to meet tomorrow to just discuss the ramifications of the start back into full swing. There are some variables because construction industry is opening on Friday, but it's a week from Friday till there are either yellow lights or green lights in certain counties where our employees live and where Low Round's office is located. As Tom alluded to, there'll probably be a period of time where we don't have direct customer interaction. So there's just some issues for personnel safety and making sure our inspectors know how to deal with situations. As Dan mentioned, there's a safety plan for construction sites. So we just want to get that all in order. But as Tom alluded to, we could be back in full operation in the office Monday or some version thereof.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. And thank you again for keeping things flowing while we've been down in the crisis. Thanks. Director Hall?
I just sent everybody the 209 from today. You'll see there's going to be some relaxation started. The governor and the Secretary of Health announced today that elective surgeries and procedures will be open again under certain guidance. Also, and that's with what are ASFs, and that's elective surgery facilities. Also, hospitals can begin to allow elective admissions and may begin performing some elective surgeries. And Liberty Forge, as of Friday, will be able to open because they've relaxed golf courses, marinas, not that it applies to us, but guided fishing trips, unless you're talking about John going down the creek.
In a tube.
Yeah, so all of those things are relaxing. We've yet to get any information on the 50,000 per 100,000. So we don't know at what point Cumberland, which is in the south central region, would be relaxed into the yellow of the red, yellow, green. So we're monitoring that to see, but we in public safety are still healthy. We are continuing the temperature checks. Every employee that comes in at the beginning of their start of their shift gets their temperature checked from EMS to see if they have hit that 100.4 or greater mark. So everybody's been healthy, and we're doing pretty well here, considering.
Good. Is that it, sir?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Solicitor Minor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The only thing I wanted to add was I spoke briefly when we talked about the property tax waiver issues in Act 15. What I took from Act 15 and what I really appreciated the legislature and governor finally doing is now we have a statute permitting meetings like we're having right now. I sent out an opinion letter early in the month because there was guidance from the Office of Open Records. They gave a legal opinion. Now we actually have a statute. It is Act 15 of 2020. It was signed last week, I believe on Tuesday. So it gives guidance about what we can do in these Zoom meetings. It does require, minutes to be prepared quickly so that they're enacted at your following meeting or 20 days, whichever shorter. But it does take out some of the more onerous storage requirements and other things that the Office of Open Records had opined. And there also was a competing House bill, which was a little more restrictive. So I think this is the better format for Act 15 and for creating these emergencies. Hopefully we never have one again, but in the future now we'll have legislative authority as soon as the emergency declared that we can begin to do these sorts of meetings. So that's my report.
How are we doing, Steve?
I think you're doing great. And like I said, I also appreciated the folks at Office of Open Records giving the opinion but I don't like giving that to my clients because, you know, that was one state agency. And as I put in the letter to the township manager, the district attorneys association was saying they wouldn't prosecute you folks for violating the sunshine law. That may not be the comfort level that you liked. So having a statute is a lot better to me than a legal opinion.
Right. Thank you.
Well, thanks for keeping us up to speed and thanks for keeping us straight.
You're welcome.
Mr. Manager?
I have nothing further to add tonight.
Okay. Commissioner Holtzman?
Nothing.
Nothing. Commissioner Shin?
Yes, I think I saw on the media the other night that we had an EMS employee that was the employee of the day. Am I right on that, Dave?
I think so.
One of the part-time paramedics that works for one of the health systems, but real valued, good paramedic.
It's good to be around people like that.
Absolutely.
My hat's off. I have nothing else, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner Shin. Commissioner Black?
Just want to give a big shout out to all of our first responders for hanging in there through this whole episode. I know it's not over, but let's all hope that it will be soon. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Kutz?
Thank you, Mr. President. Briefly, I'm curious, Mr. Manager, parks as outdoor recreations restrictions are being lifted. I know that probably won't apply to us because we're still under the stay at home, and the whole rationale for shutting the parks down was to encourage the stay at home. In the event that you would feel it be an appropriate step to open parks prior to our next meeting, is that something we would be able to convene another call to determine, or that you'd be able to go ahead and do without formal action at our next meeting?
I can do it if you give me the permission to do it. I mean, the intention was not to, maybe play fields, for example, could be used. But I still think that we ought to keep the playgrounds, the play equipment closed until the stay-at-home order is lifted. So
Sure, and I'm not suggesting tonight that we move to open it right now or on Friday. My thought was more come May 8th when the restrictions begin to be lifted. We're still going to have a week and change until our next meeting at that point. And my thought was, if you come to the determination yourself in your professional opinion that you'd like to lift some restrictions, do you need guidance from us to do that tonight, or is that something we can visit when the time comes?
Well, again, if they lift a stay-at-home order on the 8th, if they do not extend it, I would suggest that we open everything except the playgrounds. That would be my recommendation.
And we meet on the 11th then, right? So we don't have anything.
No, I'm sorry. Let me back that up a bit. If they extend the stay-at-home order, I would not open up the playgrounds, but we may be able to open up playing fields, like other recreation, like golf or whatever. I'm still a little nervous about the play equipment simply because of the time the virus can live on it. But I think if everything is lifted by the 8th, I think we can open up our parks and playgrounds.
Awesome. And as Commissioner Shin just pointed out, we do meet on the 11th. I appreciate that. So in any event, we'd be able to provide a recommendation then. So thank you. The only other thing I want to say is just been enjoying getting to know how many awesome small businesses we have in the township. Tried a couple different food trucks. I've been making a concerted effort to get out to as many local businesses that are still operating as I can, and appreciate them still operating and providing a service. So I think moving forward, we'll be doing whatever we can to support our small businesses in Lower Allen. And those that are stepping up in this time, there's people who are providing food to our first responders. They're providing masks. They're converting facilities into manufacture things for healthcare workers. And those are the things that bring out the best in people. And I just want to say I appreciate that. And I look forward to supporting those businesses again as the restrictions are lifted. And that's all I have, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kutz. Ms. Trone, would you let us know if there's anybody still with us from the public and if anyone's been chomping at the bit, so to speak, to get in and say anything?
The only person who wrote in was Jeff Logan, who's actually on our planning commission. And he just wrote back in and said, everyone's doing a great job. So and I think he's actually left the meeting now too. So
Was that it?
that's the only comment I've had.
All right. Well, hi, Jeff. Thanks.
I don't think we have anybody from the public still on the meeting.
Okay.
You know that everybody else is staff.
That's the staff.
Okay, so I'll start out with a question or two. And the first one is regarding the emergency order that under. It's my understanding the last one I signed was to the end of this month. And since we are extended to at least the 8th from the state, do we need to take any action between now and that date? And so if we do, you can guide us, that would be terrific. I guess I'm directing that question to either Mr. Hall or Mr. Renaud.
Well, the emergency order was extended until the end of April. Being in the state of emergency allows us to make certain purchases, and it allows us to be able to apply for reimbursement of certain expenses. I don't know that it wouldn't hurt anything, obviously, but I don't know that we're going to be in that category between April 30th and May 8th. Now, if they extend it, you know, we may face some additional expenses.
Okay, so I'm hearing that no action really is suggested at this point.
Well, if the board wants to vote tonight to extend it until, let's say, May the 5th, I can have an order ready for you to sign tomorrow. It doesn't hurt anything to extend it.
I would agree. I think that we don't know what's happening. And so rather than scramble at the last minute, I'm not so sure that we're going back to, that we're going to go to yellow on the 8th, going into the 9th, because I think the numbers are still up there for Cumberland County. So I'm not sure we're going to hit the trigger point of 50. And we'll know, within another week, but I just don't know. So it's always something that the board could cancel at their next meeting, but to have it in place just in case is probably not a bad idea.
The commissioners want to weigh in on that at all?
Are we still in session?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, then I'd like to make a motion that we extend the emergency declaration until May 15th.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. So if Mr. Manager, if you want to, or Director Hall, either both of you want to put that together, I'll come in and get it signed so we don't miss out on any financial opportunities if they should arise. Other than that, I just want to echo what many people have said tonight about the efforts that our staff and public safety has put forth. I hear great things from our residents about going through this crisis and some of the problems that they've had to try to solve with our staff and personnel, and they've relatively happy with things, and that's just really good. And it speaks volumes of how we do things. And I just want to reiterate how grateful I am, and I know I speak on behalf of the other commissioners, that the staff's willing and looking at our finances, serious. And Director Grove, thank you for the hard work that you put in to put these numbers together, and Mr. Manager and the rest of the staff. And again, appreciate in advance that we'll keep an eye on this and that we get it closely when as things move along and we try to recover from this problem. Also, I would just like again to say the spirit out there, the small businesses, and and the big businesses too, but the small businesses in the Lower Allen Township. I mean, you go on social media and you go any online, Twitter, you just see our businesses to do what they can do. I can name, I'm not going to name them tonight, but you probably know who many of them are. Just coming up with creative ways to get either their product, their food, or to people. And in many cases, I'm seeing a lot of donations going to first responders and healthcare workers and other organizations that are helping out through this crisis for free in some cases, being donated from some of our businesses in Lower Allen. And for that, I am very grateful if any of them are listening tonight, as I'm sure everybody is. So having said that, again, I think this was a pretty good meeting. I'm hoping at some point we can start seeing the light and getting back together at the township building for these meetings. Personally, I'm not getting used to these or thrilled with them. I'd rather do this stuff in person, especially when we have these tedious items like all the dockets we had tonight to community development. So having said that, if there's no further comments on the meeting, I'm going to call this meeting adjourned.
Hold on, Mr. President. I believe you wanted to recess to executive session rather than adjourn.
Oh, that's right.
I beg your pardon. I had it crossed off at first and I forgot to take the cross off and circle it. So yes, we are going to executive session. I am going to re-adjourn the meeting.
I thought we weren't coming back after.
And then we will adjourn.
Well, that was my next question is, do you anticipate any action to come out of the executive session? I guess that's directed toward Commissioner Kutz.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I don't. It's just one question that is for the manager about the personnel, and at most would be just asking you to include it moving forward, but nothing tonight that I think needs to be taken, would need action.
Okay. So
in that case, you can adjourn to.
He said.
So yes. Instead of recess to executive session, we will adjourn to executive session. I got it right.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.